So you wanted to be a star. Tell me a little bit about Adewale, the adolescent, because it sounds like you were quite focused for you to achieve a master's in law. Ain't nothing to play with. But I mean, were you always a good boy like that? I mean, it suggests that you was the studious type, but I see that twinkle in your eye. I know you was up to no good, especially living in North London.
Well, we call it, I was rough and ready. That's what I am. I mean, and what I mean by that is I had a really hard upbringing. I was fostered out to white parents at the age of 6 weeks old. So I didn't really see my African parents till I was more or less 16. And they put me in an area called Tilbury, which is like, you know, the slums of Essex. You know, slums of Essex. And at that time, it was just nothing but skinheads and National Front. And so every day, it was about fighting skinheads. And it wasn't like there was a backup down there. I was the only black guy there. So I was fighting 3 or 4 of them at a time. So that's what I cut my teeth on. And so, yeah, I was a bad boy. I was running gangs. I was used to run a skinhead gang. I was a black skinhead in it. And it got to a point where, you know, I had to be pulled out. And by that time, my father had, you know, he'd made his way to becoming a lawyer and took me out of there and put me in this kind of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air kind of, it's a really...
Was that the kind of real extent of the transition? You went from real ghetto to real posh?
Ghetto, I went from Tilbury to Sutton, Surrey. Wow. And I was as raw as you could.
How did you handle that?
It was rough because I had a lot of assistants and you know teachers, tutors, and probation people because I got into some trouble when I was a kid. Just
nothing serious, just
nothing serious. More scraps and fighting. I was a rucker. Do you know what I mean? That's what it was down there. So you know, but as a 16-year-old, I was deadly. You know, I was just like you couldn't tame me. So the process of then having to learn how to be human because I was an animal on the street,
almost feral type.
Yeah, and then 2, having you know this sense of self-hatred, having to turn that into self-esteem because I realized I had none. You know, I hadn't been to school in years. You know, I was just bunking off. And then to have to go and do in 2 years what I'd missed in 5, it was the most intense drill I'd ever done, you know, to get my A-levels and then get back on the track. But I did it. And I tell you what it was that made me, you know, I'm not anything extraordinary other than what you are, anybody else is. It was a matter of a click in my head. It was like, look, it was either I was going to Nigeria, which I didn't want to do, or going to detention center, which I didn't want to do, or this was my passport out. And I just clocked that from straight. I just said, right, let me just knock this out, give it to them, and then I'm free. And that's kind of what I did. So it's more about, and I hadn't even passed an exam. So the first time I passed an exam was a huge esteem builder for me because I always thought I was stupid because that's what I was told. And so once I got through that, that started to build my self-esteem. But I think the drive I've always had, like, you know, just to conquer, because even in the gang, I was running the gang. I had the gift of the gab. You know, I was the man on the street.
You was the boy then, really, yeah.
So I had that in me, and it just translates. So, you know, you could never put anybody say no, then it was a yes to me. So I always had that in me, even with the education, you know, and even the way I used to study, it was very feral. I mean, I remember I would not give up on a solution until I got it, and I'd stay in a room for a day and a half, just slogging at it, tearing things up because I couldn't figure it out.
You had that drive and you needed to complete it.
Yeah, I'm that kind of guy that will not be defeated, will not give up. That's just how I am.
So tell me. I mean, I know when your role in Oz, you know, it's been lauded because of that. You had that gritty edge. You brought that gritty edge to it. But I liked you in The Born Identity, man. But for you, what was your best role? I mean, obviously you've done so much, but what's been your best and probably most satisfying experience?
There's a few. I mean, I loved Oz. I'll be honest with you. It was such a pleasure to play it because the creative freedom that you have with a character like that. When someone says, you know, you're never getting out of prison and you've killed a policeman and you've chopped his head off and you slept with it under your bed for months, I mean, you automatically think, oh, this guy's mad. You know what I mean? It's brilliant, you know, because you're fearless. You're already dead, you know, inside. So there's no limit. And so when you get to be able to run like that, that's a joy. Then swear to me in the name of Allah.
I do so swear.
I waited for this moment. Now I can raise you as my equal. Together, there is nothing we can't do. Nothing. Nothing. The other roles, I loved Majestic because it was so far removed from me, you know, the American. And when I looked at him, his stuff, I'm like, wow, that's not even me. Do you know, I like that. But I think I really enjoyed Echo. I really enjoyed that because, you know, I'm a Buddhist.
Would you say that role came at a time when you've developed as an actor, you've been through certain things, so you can kind of draw on certain experiences that will help you kind of execute a little better than maybe you would have 3-4 years previous to that?
Yeah, I actually think I was less self-conscious in the early stages of my career. Like,
no fear.
Yeah, you just don't.
Unknown.
Yeah, and I think that's better.
Right.
You know, as you go through your career, but you get technically better. So that rawness is what is the essence of it.
So what was it about Echo that made you kind of?
Well, as I said, like my faith is a Buddhist, right? And so it was quite a challenge for me to then play some, you know, a Catholic priest. You know, I mean, I was brought up Roman Catholic, but I don't subscribe to that religion. So I was like, oh, I was a little scared. I was like, oh, am I going to drop my practice and go there? So it was quite challenging. But then what I liked about it is he was very mystical. And I think that represents more of who I am, more of a spiritual kind of person. And then it had the duality of the spirituality, but he was still a rude boy. You know, he's a warlord. And the questions that it posed was that, well, is being a priest about the clergy and the cloth, or is it a matter of one's heart?
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me.